A delegation of American congressmen met with Pakistani President Asif Ali Zardari earlier this month. What made headlines after that meeting was President Zardari's pledge to work together with the United States to eradicate the Haqqani Network. This created ripples because many felt that it sort of did not match with the quite recent response that Pakistan Army had given when Admiral Mike Mullen had called the Haqqani Network a veritable arm of the ISI. The message from the Pakistan Army so far has been that Pakistan cannot go beyond what it has already done when it comes to tackling the terrorists. Pakistani government or Pakistan Army, which one of the two has more influence in the country to undertake the task to go against the Haqqani Network? Because get rid of the Haqqanis is a demand that Pakistan's ally and financial backer, United States, has been making for a very long time now. So tonight on the platform, we will see if President Zardari's statement is a form of some new sort of turn in the story of Haqqanis, or whether Pakistani government is in a bit of denial on what serious implications this matter might have on Pak-US relations and also regional security. Welcome, I'm Waqas Rafique, your host here in the Islamabad studios of Express 24/7, and tonight, to take part in the discussion from here, I have the privilege of having with me in the studios Senator Akram Zaki. He's also the former Secretary General of Foreign Affairs of Pakistan. Thank you so much for joining us, Senator Zaki, here on the platform tonight. Let's cross over now live to Voice of America's studios in Washington, D.C., where my colleague from there, Ayesha Tanzeem, is present with her guest. Hello, Ayesha.
Hello, Waqas, and welcome to the Voice of America studios in Washington, where we have with us Marvin Weinbaum of the Middle East Institute and James Farwell, the author of the Pakistan Cauldron. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You heard my colleague, Waqas, what President Zardari said. How much power does President Zardari have to implement what he promises to U.S.? Go ahead, James.
Actually, it depends upon whether or not he's willing to use the bully pulpit of the presidency to try and mobilize public support. Haqqani, as the Army Chief of Staff, certainly has at one level more power. But as the president of the country, Zardari does have the ability, working in tandem with the general, to be able to mobilize public support in favor of a policy. I don't look at success there as being a matter of whether one does it or the other. I think that they need to work together, and they need to decide what is in Pakistan's best interests, what serves the interests of the people of Pakistan, and then they have to pursue policies that do that.
Marvin, you agree?
Well, yes, I think I agree with the idea that there is a real challenge to Pakistan's leadership to be able to bring along public opinion rather than simply try to follow public opinion. But in my mind, President Zardari's words to the American congressmen, just to please them, as far as foreign policy...
Because they don't want to? They don't want to? Are you saying Zardari doesn't want to?
No, I think Zardari would like to have the Americans believe that he's certainly understands the demands. But the point here is that foreign policy and security policy in Pakistan are in the hands of the military. I just see that as an open and shut matter. Every opportunity where President Zardari has gone out, he's gone out on a limb, and he's often had to climb back very unceremoniously.
Well, let's take that question to Islamabad, to Mr. Zaki. Mr. Zaki, President Zardari, why isn't he mobilizing public opinion, just like the government did when they wanted to have an operation in Swat, and actually have the public follow them as opposed to following the public opinion?
Well, I think in every country, insofar as the security and defense policy is concerned, naturally the civilian administration takes advice from the military advisors and the military establishment, and they have to work together because no civilian government can formulate a policy on security without the background and support of the defense forces. And this doesn't happen in any country, not even in the United States, where I think my friends sitting there understand the role of Pentagon in determining the security policy of the United States, even as compared to the present White House. Now, when the crisis started and the new government came into office, the army gave a briefing to the political leadership. Initially, as you know, the two major parties formed almost cooperation and then even joined the coalition for temporarily. So there, after listening to all these, it was a political decision that on the basis of briefing, the responsibility for dealing with the situation was entrusted to the army.
Right.
So if the army assumed a role in this matter,
Okay.
it was with the final approval of the political leadership.
Right, but I just want to draw your attention towards the Corps Commanders meeting, Senator Zaki, that was held after Admiral Mike Mullen's statements of the ISI of the Haqqanies being a veritable arm of the ISI. The army leadership had come out saying that they cannot go beyond what they have already done against the network. Now, how do you look at President Zardari's very recent statement? It was earlier this month in Karachi, and he's been spoken to US congressmen saying that he would work jointly with the US to eradicate. What is he trying to say here?
Well, may I say this, that there was a conference of all the political parties called by the government, where the army senior officials, including the ISI and the army chief, explained the security situation and gave a briefing. So to say that there is no coordination, whatever policy has been decided has the blessings of the political leadership, without which the army cannot function. Even the other day our Supreme Court gave a verdict that any action by the armed forces has, please let me finish, has to be. So if Mr. Zardari, President Zardari has talked to the congressman and he was gracious enough to receive the delegation of people who don't understand international relations and don't understand diplomacy, and who after meeting the head of state, instead of reporting back to their own government or to their own Congress, in the press of the country they are visiting, they speak against the president who graciously received them. It is very unfortunate lack of understanding of international relations, and they have sabotaged, in a sense, a very delicate relationship by making their statement that we don't.
But coming to the issue of Haqqani Network, forgive
no,
me
let
for
me say
interrupting
this
you.
is the basic thing is, the president told them that we want to work with the United States.
Okay.
And the ISI and the army has also improved their working with the United States, and the security cooperation has substantially increased. They arrested many of the Al-Qaeda people. So the government and the army are working in tandem.
All right.
But there is an unfortunate attempt to try to say that they are different.
Right. Let's go to Washington now. And Ayesha, if I could ask Mr. Farwell this question. Would you say that a major focus now, Mr. Farwell, is on talking with the Haqqanis rather than going after them with a full-scale military operation launched by the Pakistan army against them in North Waziristan? Because this is the sort of idea many Pakistanis got when Ms. Hillary Clinton recently visited Pakistan, and she said that there were so many other ways of tackling the Haqqanis: better intelligence, cutting supplies, and keeping a control on the sort of cash that is transferred to the terrorist organization.
I think that from an American point of view, that what we are trying to do is to apply all pressure that is possible. First and foremost, we would like to see Pakistan deal with the Haqqani Network. And I think in order to do that, it will be necessary for both the military and the political establishment, as you correctly pointed out, to work together. They cannot work in division. They have to work together in order to create public support for taking on the Haqqani Network. One of the reasons that I think that some elements in Pakistan have perhaps given support to the Haqqani Network is that there has been sympathy among the Pakistani public to provide that support. That has to change, and that requires a concerted joint effort to do that. From an American point of view, our interest, like that of Pakistan, is to be able to deal with the Haqqani Network and to do so without causing unnecessary civilian casualties. One can understand why Pakistanis are concerned about that.
Let me follow up with something our guest in Islamabad said. Did the congressman jeopardize a very delicate matter? Is it possible that President Zardari was giving him a message with the support of the military, with the support of General Haqqani, and he just came out in public and just messed it up?
Well, that's possibly the case, but no, I think we overestimate what the meaning is when a group of congressmen show up in a capital and start talking to leaders. These people have their own views. They don't necessarily represent American foreign policy. As far as I'm concerned, as I look at it, the United States has very little expectation that a military action will be undertaken against the Haqqani group. For a variety of reasons that are well known, not the least of which is the fact that it would be a very tough job. And the last thing in the world the military needs now is to have...
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but something that you said, I want to bring it up. You said these people have very little to do with the government policy. Obviously, the Pakistani side understands that. Then would Zardari then be making a policy statement to a group of congressmen?
Well, that's right. And that's why... you know, very often what happens, and he's done this before, where someone comes in and in order to placate them, in a sense, he says, well, yes, we're going to do everything that we could conceivably do. As I see it, and I think that this is the view here in Washington, and that is it's not going to be a military campaign, and as was suggested in Islamabad, what we will see, what we're asking for is non-military kinds of assistance, and yes, intelligence, also, as James would have it, also trying to build up public support for more aggressive actions, but not a military campaign anytime soon.
Waqas, do you have a question for my guests?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, Mr. Zaki would want to respond to what's being said there.
No, I just want to say that we should take the interview of the President in its totality. The President said we are ready to work with the United States. This is the same view of the Army and the ISI, and they are working with them. Our intelligence cooperation has substantially improved. We have made even a forward movement of our troops on the borders between Pakistan and Afghanistan, from where the intrusions were taking place into Pakistan. And this is recognized. Today you might have seen the statement about Air Force Chief in Dubai, that we have been using even the Air Force to bomb some of the places where we feel that some of the people are hiding. So the Pakistan government has been doing everything that they think is feasible. But one of the things that President Zardari raised was that it can't be solved by military alone. And therefore there was a proposal for development opportunity zones. And no progress has been made on that. Unless we do some constructive economic planning to reintegrate and develop that area, and involve those people away from what they are doing currently, things won't improve. So I would like to ask my friends sitting in Washington, how is the progress going to be made on the development opportunity zones project that was initiated many years ago? And nothing has happened on it.
Ayesha, if we could have a response to Mr. Zaki's question.
Yeah, I think
Washington.
I can. No, it has never been approved here in Washington. It's been a proposal which has been before the decision makers here, but there has been no action. If that did happen, though, the last place it would occur would be in North Waziristan. And remember now, we're talking about a Haqqani network of Afghans. The security zone, the development zones rather, are intended here to improve the lives and increase the economy, particularly of the Pakistani tribal areas, not to satisfy the Afghans.
The Afghans. Let me, and I will come to you. Let me ask something of Mr. Zaki, Waqas, which is Pakistani army, as you mentioned in your intro, has said that it's done more than enough. I want to bring your attention to a New York Times article published recently, which says that last July, the top members members of the Haqqani family attended the graduation ceremony of Darul Uloom Haqqaniya in Akora Khatak. They stayed there for several hours, and after lunch they left in a car with Islamabad number plates. It's also alleged in this article and by some other terrorism suspects that the brothers of Jalaluddin Haqqani, which is Khalil Haqqani and Ibrahim Haqqani, live in Islamabad, have been living there for 20 years. They travel to the UAE from Islamabad airport. How can the army say, Mr. Zaki, or the government, that they're doing enough when these people are driving around in Islamabad number plate cars?
Right, so it means that Pakistan is providing protection.
Well, basically, the United States since 2010, having been having dialogues with the people of the Taliban and even Haqqani Network in the Middle East, in Saudi Arabia, even in 2011 they have had dialogues. Now the policy that Hillary Clinton, Secretary of State, announced was fighting and talking and also using other means. So in that sense, Pakistan has also been, if it has some contact, facilitating the links between the Taliban and the United States. So if we are going to have both fighting and dialogue, then Pakistan, according to their policy, is cooperating on both counts. Similarly, you see, there is no intelligence agency in the world which does not keep some kind of a link with wherever there is trouble. But it doesn't mean that they are supporting them. It is even to keep yourself informed, to protect your own interest, you have to have links. Secondly, after our operations in Swat, the people involved there which were pushed are now being given protection in Afghanistan. And they are making raids into Pakistan from time to time. Pakistan has repeatedly brought their presence to the notice of the friends in other side, both Afghan government and the United States occupying forces, but no action is taken against them. So it is a question of being able to do things.
Okay, right. So you said talking and fighting. That's a very important point. And Ayesha, I would like to ask that question from your guest there. But first, I want your response, Senator Zaki. And this is precisely what Secretary Clinton also said while she was visiting.
This is what our policy
She
is.
Suggested some new ways, like I said in the beginning, of tackling the Haqqani network. So I'm curious, what sort of help do you think, keeping in mind the connections that you said that we need to keep with the Haqqanis, what sort of help can Pakistan actually provide now in tackling?
You see, no country is more interested than Pakistan in having a strong, peaceful and stable Afghanistan. For the last 30 years, people have come and gone, but we have been here and we have suffered, both during the Soviet occupation, during the Civil War and during the subsequent developments. And we have borne the brunt of our society has been destabilized. We have become involved in many, we have suffered financial losses, we have suffered security lapses, we have become victims of bombing, suicide bombing throughout the country. And when there was a policy of surge, which was initiated a year ago with the promise that we'll be able to deal with them, some of those people, when the surge policy was followed with 30,000 additional troops, moved into Pakistan. Some moved into the northern parts of Afghanistan and they destabilized even North Afghanistan.
Okay.
So the surge policy did not succeed.
Right.
And then after that, pressure on Pakistan increased. So instead of publicly putting pressure on Pakistan and creating a controversial situation, the best thing is the allies should talk to each other in confidence.
All right, so negotiations are the way forward, and the sticking point over tackling the Haqqani network right now between Pakistan and US seems to be the talk and fight at the same time strategy. US wants to do that, while Pakistan asks for a ceasefire first, against a ceasefire on the fighting that's going on, and then going for negotiations. We'll put this question before our guest in Washington, but that's when we return from this quick break. Stay with the platform.
Welcome back to the platform. We're talking about the Haqqani Network, and here in Washington, D.C. studios, Mr. Farwell, they talked about the sticking point. I want to bring something else to the attention. It's been reported, and here at VOA we've talked to a lot of people of Afghan origin, journalists working in the area. There seems to be resentment building in Afghanistan population against Pakistan. What is all that about?
Well, I think naturally enough, people in one country want to determine their own future, and I think a lot of Afghans resent the idea that Pakistan should be the one that decides what its future should be. In both cases, you have nations comprised of very proud people, and needless to say, both of them want to make those decisions for themselves. So naturally, Afghans don't particularly want Pakistan or anybody else interfering in what they do.
Yeah, well, let me add to that this is not a recent development. The suspicion of Pakistan, the effort to create counterweights to Pakistan, which has led to the friendship over the years, decades, with India, is because in Afghanistan, the feeling is that Pakistan, as the big brother, is overbearing and tries to play too large a role in the politics of the country. Right or wrong, that's the perception. And that perception exists across the Afghan society. The Taliban themselves don't trust Pakistan. Look what happened when the Mujahideen went back in 1992. Practically the first thing that Ustad Rabbani did was to get on the phone to New Delhi. So they see India as a counterweight here. That, you know, and of course it dates from the very beginning, the very origin of Pakistan. There was bad blood between the two countries.
Between the two. But here I want to add another point, and I want to bring our guest in Islamabad, Mr. Zaki. By interfering in Afghanistan, as Pakistan is alleged to do, and here at VOA we talk to a lot of people of Afghan origin, isn't Pakistan acting like a mini colonial power and hence suffering the repercussions from that?
Well, it's a very strange allegation that a country which interferes in every country's affairs should accuse Pakistan of interfering in Afghanistan. We are their neighbors. We have natural relationship with them. In the winter, the Afghan people used to cross into Pakistan. In the summer, they used to cross back because the tribes are the same. People come from thousands of miles away and they say we are interfering. I'm very surprised at this allegation by Mr. Nosbaum. The basic thing is
Mr. Zaki, let me
that
qualify.
Afghanistan,
let me qualify. Mr. Weinbaum is not making this allegation. Let me clarify. Mr. Weinbaum is not making this allegation.
History, but let me say, if you have asked me a question, let me answer the question. The basic fact is that from the very first day, he is absolutely right that India has been trying to create a foothold in Afghanistan to embarrass Pakistan on the two fronts. And that is why when Pakistan came into existence, Afghanistan was the one country that voted against Pakistan's entry into the United Nations as a new country. But it is very interesting for you to recall, now that you've gone into history, that when India attacked Pakistan in '65 war, in spite of whatever the bad relations we had with Afghanistan, the Afghan king assured Pakistan that they will not interfere on the back and we could take all our forces to fight and defend ourselves. So we have had a relationship of friendship and understanding. And then when the Soviet Union came, Pakistan was the country that gave refuge to 4 million refugees, and about 2.5 million are still living in Pakistan, and the world ran away and we continue to support them. So we are not interfering. It is the Afghans who have come and settled into our country, who come and go back and forth, and it is those Afghans who are creating in fact problems for us.
All right, and keeping that historical background in mind, people here in Pakistan, when they look at the local press and electronic media also, they hear about things such as the operations in Upper Dir, the military launching operations in Parachinar. Even then, that has not been effective in tackling the Haqqani problem, Mr. Zaki.
Well, you see, those areas are such that a superpower like the United States has not been able to achieve its objective in 10 years in Afghanistan. They could defeat Hitler, they could defeat fascist Japan in 6 years, and they have not been able to pacify Afghanistan, and they expect Pakistan, a small power.
So do you think more time is something that Pakistan
No, I
Army
think
needs?
this area is such where even the United States cannot succeed.
Okay.
How can Pakistan succeed there?
Yeah, I want to ask this question to Mr. Weinbaum, Ayesha, and going back to the talking and fighting point. Mr. Weinbaum, there are reports that before the embassy in Kabul came under attack, there was a meeting that was held where Haqqanies and the United States participated, and according to reports, Pakistan had played a part in bringing the Haqqanies to negotiating there. But one of the things that probably irks the Pakistani authorities is the US asking for a guarantee that talks with the Haqqanies would be successful. Do you think it's possible for Pakistan to give that kind of a guarantee that negotiations with Haqqanies would be successful and Pakistan could play a part in that?
Well, I think Pakistan can play a part. Pakistan regularly tells us that it has some leverage, even though it does not have responsibility for what the Haqqanis do. But let's face it, those discussions never really got very far. And the idea that the Haqqanis would necessarily go against what they consider to be their interests, even with Pakistan's pressure, I think is misrepresenting the situation. The Haqqanis are pretty much determined as to what they have as their goals in Afghanistan. And so I agree with you. I don't believe Pakistan can lead them around.
Right.
Well, let's move beyond what the Haqqani Network wants and what the U.S. has been saying. What are Pakistan's strategic interests in Afghanistan? We know some of them. What I want to know is, how can the U.S. help Pakistan achieve them? Because every country has to defend its interests. Pakistan has to do it too. How can the U.S. help?
Well, first, let's briefly summarize what those key interests as we think Pakistanis see them are. Number one, Pakistan fears military encirclement by India. India on its east, a Tajik-dominated government that is pro-India in Afghanistan. From a Pakistani point of view, they want to change that. The answer to that, ultimately, I believe, realistically, is going to be through the encouragement by the United States in developing stronger economic ties. I was very encouraged to see the decision by the Pakistani government to grant most favored nation status to Pakistan. In the last 24 hours, we've seen discussions about more normalization of visa procedures. Strengthening economic ties benefits both countries and tends to lower tension, and I think can change the atmosphere and the environment for that. That's number one. I think number two, and this is very difficult to do, Pakistan, as you know, has 25 to 35 million Pashtuns living in its country. The Taliban is fundamentally a Pashtun-dominated force. And in Afghanistan, a lot of Pashtuns believe that they have been cut out of a central role in the government. There needs to be some way to find a balance that
Pashtun-dominated, as Pakistan has often said. Mr. Weinbaum, quickly, how can the U.S. help? We've talked a lot about Haqqanis and what they do and what Pakistan's doing and not doing. How can the U.S. help? They have to understand they need to help Pakistan.
Well, I think the U.S., of course, has been quite determined to help Pakistan. The last thing that the United States needs now is a destabilized Pakistan. This is not in the U.S. interest, nor does the region need a destabilized Pakistan. So we do have an aid program. It's under pressure.
No, I'm not talking about helping Pakistan. I'm talking about helping Pakistan's strategic interests in Afghanistan.
Well, I think, as has been suggested, they have to work together. But we have to, and this goes back to something that Senator Zaki said earlier. Why haven't we succeeded in these 10 years? And really, it's only the last few that we've made a serious effort, actually. Why haven't we? Well, there are many people here who believe you can never defeat an insurgency that has sanctuary in a neighboring country. It's never been done. And that this, as much as anything, explains why the United States takes the harder position that it does. It's responding to public opinion here, which sees that the very people that they're fighting are able to withdraw to Pakistan. And that's the bottom line here in dividing the two countries on the Afghan struggle.
So we're now back to the same thing. And Mr. Zaki, Waqas, I want to ask your guest this question. We're now back to the U.S. and Pakistan having to work together, but there being an insurgency in Afghanistan and getting support from Pakistan. Tell me about the serious discussions within Pakistan where how to tackle this without violence. I mean, is Pakistan thinking of how can we get our strategic interests in Afghanistan without using these networks?
Well, let me first briefly comment on what Mr. Weinbaum has said about the sanctuaries. Unfortunately, Pakistan set up about 1,000 posts to check the infiltration, and there were very few posts on the Afghan side. When the surge was started, even the forward posts on the Afghan side were withdrawn, and that is what there is partial responsibility of Pakistan to check the infiltration, but there is also a major responsibility of the forces inside Afghanistan to prevent their coming out of Afghanistan into Pakistan. Now, the reality is that 4 provinces in Afghanistan, Paktika, Logar and Khost, they are virtually under the control of what you call Haqqani Network. And north of that is the presence of Hikmatyar's people, and they are operating from there. If they were coming from Pakistan, they would not be able to reach from this whole region to Kabul.
So you think there should be more checks on the other side
So
of the border?
number one, there is a responsibility of the forces present there to prevent those people from coming out. Why don't they kill them on the border when they are leaving? Secondly, what can Pakistan do? Well, President of Pakistan, when he was elected, he invited Mr. Karzai to come and join his inauguration. We facilitated their election. Then when Karzai was re-elected, Mr. Zardari, President Zardari, went to his inauguration. And he has several times met them on bilateral meetings, and he has met them trilaterally via Iran as well as via Turkey. Only recently, on the 2nd of November, there was a meeting of trilateral with many regional powers, and a long communique has been issued from that meeting that we want strong, stable Afghanistan and we want to cooperate with them. Our Prime Minister has been going there also. So we are doing whatever we can to have bilateral and trilateral efforts, including the United States. We have a trilateral commission with them.
All right.
So we are trying to improve our relationship on the basis of sovereign equality and regional cooperation.
Right, and we'll continue with the discussion about how to tackle the Haqqani issue here on the platform, but that's when we return from this break. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Here in Washington, D.C., we have Mr. Marvin Weinbaum and Mr. James Farwell, both really extremely interested in the region and knowledgeable about it. Let's bring the ball back to the U.S. and say it's going to be an election year in less than 2 months. What are going to be the political ramifications, Mr. Weinbaum, of this whole...
Well, our election will take place a year from now, a little less than a year from now. We're talking about the presidential elections. At the moment, Pakistan and Afghanistan do not loom large as issues for the people in the United States. The economy dominates just about everything. So that's the case. There is not well-formed opinion on either side, for example, on the Republican, and James can talk much more authoritatively about this, but there's a division within the Republicans.
Let's talk about U.S.-Pakistan relationship, Haqqani Network, and whether that will play a role, and then we'll go to Islamabad and say what role they want to see it play in the U.S.-Pakistan relationship.
Right. From an American point of view, American taxpayers and American political figures look at it this way. The U.S. has given billions upon billions of dollars to Pakistan in the interest of forming a partnership against violent extremism. From their point of view, Pakistan has been playing two sides against the middle. We currently have, although we've suspended some aid, have appropriated, I think, in theory, $2 billion of military aid. There's other aid that's civilian. All of that aid could very easily get cut off. There is a growing feeling, both within Congress and within the American public, that we shouldn't be providing money to somebody that isn't really going to be a partner. And it sort of throws into high relief the differences in view. And the bin Laden attack, I think, helped to crystallize these differences. Completely different reactions. Americans' attitude was mission accomplished. From a Pakistani point of view, they were put into an untenable position. If they didn't know bin Laden was there, they were ignorant. If they did, they were complicit.
Go ahead, Waqas. Do you have a question?
Ayesha, yes, Senator Zaki wants to respond to that, the talk of aid, right?
Well, I am surprised that there is a claim that Pakistan got billions and billions of dollars. Every month they are spending at least $10 billion in Afghanistan. And they are giving about $16 to $18 billion to Afghan government. To Pakistan, there is a pledge of $1.8 billion annually, out of which about half or little more than half is the administrative expenses. And in last year, a total of $375 million were only given to Pakistan. And they are out of billions and billions. And in fact, by cooperating with the United States, Pakistan, in terms of opportunity cost and personal losses, has suffered something close to $68 billion.
Okay.
And secondly, even these reimbursement funds, that about 800 million that Pakistan has spent on behalf of the United States fighting this war, have been withheld recently. When the delegation which met the president met, they said, President expects that we will continue the aid, but we will not continue the aid. So how can they talk in one time with billions and billions?
Right. And then Senator Zaki, President Zardari, in his meeting with the congressman that we are talking about tonight, also spoke of more trade from the US rather than aid. And I want to ask this question to Mr. Farwell, Ayesha, that when we speak of helping Pakistan out in the region, as Senator Zaki also pointed out, the reconstruction opportunity zones in FATA was something that has not been approved so far in Washington. And President Zardari has also asked for trade rather than more aid, because that would, many Pakistanis feel, would help in garnering public support for going more aggressively after the terrorists. Do you think that more trade is something that Pakistan could benefit from? Although the congressman, let me add, got an impression that President Zardari still expects that the aid will continue to flow in. As a matter of fact, it could be in jeopardy actually because of the Haqqani issue.
Number one, I agree that increased trade is entirely desirable. It's the kind of ties that I think help strengthen countries. It's the kind of thing that builds prosperity for both people. I just want to correct a point that the gentleman made a minute ago. It is true that over the years that billions of dollars of aid has flowed from the United States to Pakistan. And I understand completely the point of view that he expresses from the Pakistani perspective, that the war has cost 30,000 civilian dead, it has cost 5,000 dead in military and police, that it has cost billions and billions of dollars in the economy. And I completely understand that. The question I'm responding to was, what is the dynamic of American politics? And that's really what I'm expressing. But I think that's right, that the way ahead is through increased economic ties as opposed to foreign aid.
Mr. Weinbaum, if trade is given rather than aid to Pakistan, would it increase or, improve the relationship? And then would it then have an impact on the Afghan policy and the whole Haqqani Network thing that we've been talking about?
Well, it certainly would be viewed in Pakistan as a positive development. And I think that those in Pakistan who complain that the very area where the United States could be helpful and it would not cost the United States in the same way would be in trade. The problem is, just as in Pakistan, there are political pressures. There are political pressures in the United States which unfortunately have blocked the kind of trade policy which I believe that Pakistan would profit from and ultimately the United States would profit from. So I don't think that we have any disagreements here. I might mention that how much actually, going back to the aid, how much actually has been delivered is a very legitimate point. But the figure, nevertheless, is more than $20 billion. And whereas that may be a small amount given the American debt and so on, nevertheless, we're talking about perceptions. And in the United States, it said, we're giving this money, what are we getting in return? And of course, Pakistan talks about the 30,000 or so, but those casualties have come at the hands of Pakistanis.
But in
the fighting of Pakistanis, not fighting in the Afghan war.
But in the war on terror, and Mr. Farwell, as Pakistanis say, they're fighting America's war.
Well, that's what some Pakistanis believe. I think the fact of the matter is that a lot of the violence that's being inflicted upon Pakistanis is being done by violent extremists who are Pakistanis. That is a Pakistani issue, not an American issue. And my point is that Pakistan needs to face up, take responsibility for this problem, and itself take the lead in fighting it. It's Pakistan's country. This is a proud country with talented people. They can solve this problem, but the political leadership needs to unite with the military leadership, get hold of this problem, and get on top of it, and they have not done that.
Waqas, let's ask Mr. Zaki if Pakistan has really accepted this war as its own.
Sr. Zaki?
It wasn't our own war when it started, but since it has started burning our home, it has become our war. Because if the fire breaks out somewhere and it reaches your house, then it becomes your fire. So it started as somebody's war, but it became our war. Second point I want to make is that the drone attacks have made it very unpopular in public opinion for the government to cooperate with the United States fully as they want to do. So something must be done to reconsider this policy of what is dismissed as collateral damage, the killing of civilian people.
Right.
Second thing I want to say is that peace is a necessity. We all talk about peace, but peace in Afghanistan only can come if it is an indigenous negotiations between the government.
What would that mean? Is it that US and Pakistan should stay out of it totally? Can they stay out of the peace process?
They should help an agreement which the Afghans reach themselves. For example, if Karzai government wants to talk to the Taliban or to the Haqqani Network or to anybody else or to Hikmat-Yar or to any other dissidents whom they consider, and they find a solution of the Afghans themselves and approve it by their jirga, then the international community and the neighbors should endorse and support that. If we try to suggest what they should be the solution, if there is a foreign suggestion, the Afghans, the peace will never come.
Let's ask that question, Ayesha, to Mr. Weinbaum. You just heard Mr. Zaki say that Afghans themselves should be deciding for their future. Do you think that the US and also Pakistan are meddling now in the future there?
Actually, I believe that the American position at this point is that the Afghans should take the lead. We've been very explicit that this is Afghan-led. The impression here, at least, is that it is Pakistan that has interfered in some of the negotiating process because Pakistan was not at the table. That, at least, is the impression here. No, I think that the reality here is that Senator Zaki and I think all of us agree that there is no strictly military solution. At the same time, I'm not sure that the Taliban believe that, because at this point in time, until they prove otherwise, and one major step would be to denounce Al-Qaeda, which in all these years they've not bothered to do. If they want serious discussions, they've got to begin with that.
We just have 2 minutes. I want to get both of your comments. You want Taliban to deny Al-Qaeda. Don't you think it might be their last card? That's something they're holding in their deck as a negotiator?
That's a poison card, as far as most of the international community is concerned.
You're a lawyer. You understand. You have to have something in your deck to negotiate with. If they come to the table having given up violence, having given up Al-Qaeda, what do they negotiate with?
But the answer is not Al-Qaeda. One of the strongest things that the Taliban could do for itself is to say, number one, we have no ambitions outside of Afghanistan. Number two, we denounce Al-Qaeda as a foreign influence. Number three, that notwithstanding the way that we ran this country when we had power last time, we actually do believe in pluralism, that we actually do stand for the tolerance. This is the propaganda they're putting out. Now they've got to show by actions that somehow they believe it. And I have to say that's a burden of proof that lies in their corner, and it's a stiff burden of proof. But if the Taliban wants to be credible, there's a burden on it to show that it should be.
And what do they get in return?
The Taliban?
Yeah.
Well, ultimately, if things work out, they would be part of a power sharing arrangement in Afghanistan. I honestly don't believe that will come about. I don't think that it is in the very nature of the movement to want to sit and share in a cabinet positions of power. That is not what the Taliban have ever demonstrated.
And we have only 30 seconds. And
I would just say that there's a lot of polling data in Afghanistan, and one thing that we must not forget is that polling shows very clearly that the Taliban is not popular among the average Afghans. Our view would be that the Afghans should decide their own future and not have it imposed upon it by a violent extremist force like the Taliban.
And that the Taliban are a default alternative.
Thank you very much. We have to go back to Islamabad. Waqas, take it from here.
All right, thank you so much, Ayesha, and special thank you to your distinguished guests also. Senator Zaki, I just want to go back to the talking and fighting thing, your final comment. We just got a couple of minutes left. That can we talk and fight with the Haqqanies at the same time? Can Pakistan give a guarantee that talks with them would be successful?
You see, about Afghanistan, nobody can give a guarantee. I don't think if we keep on putting preconditions. Afghan people have been there from the time of Alexander. They have been resisting and they will continue to resist what they consider
so talking with them is more important than fighting?
What they consider a foreign occupying force, they will continue to resist that. So this thing has to be, now the United States is negotiating permanent basis to maintain, to change their role from combatant to a long-term strategic presence.
Okay.
If that negotiation succeeds with the Afghan government, the chances of peace will further decline.
All right. Thank you so much, Senator Zaki, for your comments and participation in the platform tonight. And it's very important that political leadership and military leadership of all the countries that have a stake in Afghanistan be on the same page when it comes to tackling important issues such as the Haqqani Network. And we'll keep you updated on all of that here on the platform. But thank you so much for joining us in the program tonight. Let me thank my colleague from Voice of America, Ayesha Tanzeem, and our guest, Mr. Marvin Weinbaum and James P. Farwell, for participating. Thank you, Senator Zaki, and thank you once again. I'm Waqas Rafique. Good night.